So I'm Diane Gibbons, Strategic Advisor to AFWERX and SpaceWorks, and thank you for joining us on this session. How is this? No, there's... Okay. It's on now? You can hear me?
It's for the online audience,
okay.
So just speak out here.
Sorry, people, for this. Use my command voice. All right, so Diane Gibbons, Strategic Advisor to AFWERX and SpaceWorks, excited to be here as part of this session on emerging and dual-use technology. And so over the next 3 hours, we're going, I'm just kidding. Over the next 37 minutes, we are going to hold a conversation with these esteemed colleagues of mine. And overall, we want to ensure that this is engaging and informative to you. And so without further ado, let me introduce some of the panelists. And to my left is Tom Maher, Lieutenant Colonel Tom Maher. He is a classmate of mine from the Air Force Academy and leading the Prime Division within AFWERX. We worked together over this past year on autonomy while he was a student at Eisenhower. To his left is Dash, who will teach you how to properly say his full name. And Dash works on Agility Prime. We worked together on that. And he's Embry-Riddle grad, who is the only school to surpass the Air Force Academy in aeronautical and astronautical engineering, which I'm okay with. I'm good with that. And to his left, you've already met Lieutenant Colonel Rock McMillan, SpaceWorks Director, Deputy Director for AFWERX, various roles in leadership, and perhaps his most rewarding was AOC at the Air Force Academy. In any case, we are really excited to have this conversation. We know it's the last one of the day, and so we can. I guess first question. Rock, where did the name come from? I'm kidding. It's because he looks like the Rock, and we'll move to. Can you do the eyebrow?
No.
Okay. All right. Okay. So moving to more serious questions. I gave brief introductions, but if you can maybe share a little bit more about your role within AFWERX and perhaps some things you're trying to make an impact upon.
Sure, absolutely. So thanks, Diane. Like she said, so I'm in charge of the Prime Division. So up until this point, we've had one main program, so Agility Prime. And our overarching premise of the Prime Division is how do we accelerate dual-use technology and get something fielded in about a 2 to 4 year time frame. Agility Prime being the first thing that we've looked at in the electric vertical takeoff and landing space. And so it's been going on for about a year. Incredible success so far that we've seen, leveraging significant amounts of commercial investment into that eVTOL space. And then also looking at, on the same side, while we haven't levied requirements on these companies for the program, we've seen how can we use this in a military use case and leverage what they're developing on that side without making it military only. And it's been incredibly successful so far with a significant experimentation campaign, significant testing in kind with these companies, and really a lot of good feedback in between the two. So not only they're bringing their expertise on the commercial side and their investment, we're also bringing some different ideas and some different feedback to these companies for them to think about as they're developing their commercial products. So it's been incredibly successful up to this point on what we've tried to do. And so the next steps that we would like to do and the biggest impact that we're looking to make is that over the next 6-12 months, we're going to fine tune on what's that initial military use case so we can start getting some of those things out there in the field, get some really good operator feedback, and then also provide further feedback and validity to some of these companies' development that helps that cycle going with their investors as well in their commercial use case. So it's a really big thing that we want to impact the next year to 2 years time frame to field initial capability in 2023. So that's Agility Prime. The next that we're looking at that Rock mentioned is how do we engage with a prime type program in the space domain. And so that's really our next highly focused effort that we're really excited once that announcement comes out about what specific technical areas we're going to be focusing on and really put a lot of effort into partnering with industry and the commercial, really a momentum that's gone behind interest in space and how do we commercialize that aspect. So that's really those are the two big ones that we're going to focus on over the next couple of years. At the same time, we're branching out on how do we support and align with some of our bigger programs within the Department of the Air Force, within the rest of our SabreSitter portfolio. So Prime can play a factor, not as a big Prime program, but play a factor in kind of having some initiatives to focus on how do we get a little more autonomy through some of these small businesses over to some of our larger programs of record and some of these initial use cases and needs that the field has out there. So how do we do that for autonomy, for microelectronics, and other spaces? So even if they don't become in the near term, the next year or two, a full Prime program, there's still things that we can do to help connect the dots on these small businesses with our large programs. So that's initial focus on what we're talking about and what we're all about in the Prime Division.
Thanks, Tom. Dash?
So first, my role with AFWERX is to make sure everyone knows how to pronounce my name. So let's see if everyone, my name is Darshan Divakaran. Okay, let's
Say it
go
with
with
me.
Dash. Let's everyone say it. Darshan Divakaran. And I can say Dash now, that's pretty easy. So I wear multiple hats with AFWERX. On the Agility Prime side, I am one of the PMs working with eVTOL companies. Also, I work on the industry engagement side. And on the AFWERX side, I assist companies to find TPOCs on phase 2. So phase 1, phase 2, and I also approve all the invoices for phase 1. So if you're any phase 1 company and I have rejected, I always give it a good reason, but I do approve invoices. Other than that, I come from a background that is non-military. My background has been with academia, state and local, industry, nonprofits, and over 10 years been in the manned aviation side, and last 6 years in the unmanned systems industry. So a lot of small drone initiatives in various states. So I come with an out-of-box thinking approach of how industry, mainly focusing on the public-private partnerships and how emerging technologies can be successfully integrated, no matter it's in the DoD side of it or in the commercial space. So with that, I've been able to work with a lot of companies, understand what the technologies are out there. So as I talk today about, on the session, I'll try to be focusing on not just what we are doing, but what we should be doing, and how industry and academia can prepare themselves for the future of emerging technologies.
And Rock, we thought you might be sporting the new Space Force uniform. Have people seen that? Okay. But are those an ode to UT? Riddler was wondering if A&M grad, if those are ode to UT today.
So unfortunately, no Space Force uniform yet. And I wasn't one of the test guys, so I'm kind of upset that I wasn't one of the first, because we're innovating here, right? So at least I could have been one of the test guys for the uniform. So, but I've introduced myself earlier. Focus of the earlier discussion was bringing AFWERX tools to the Space Force portfolio. I'm also dual-hatted as the Deputy Director for AFWERX. So as a career Department of the Air Force acquisitions officer, I am the biggest fan, one of the biggest fans of all the things that we're doing within AFWERX. And so just bringing my experience to the table, figuring out how to take these great ideas and properly scale them across the Department of the Air Force is also part of my job with my deputy's hat on. So I talked to Steve Lauver quite a bit because I love everything that Spark is doing, and then I try and pick the key things to really scale across the Department of the Air Force. So when you put us all in a room together, there's a lot of great ideas that come out, and I'm always the believe it or not, the old crusty disgruntled lieutenant colonel in the room that's just trying to identify some of the potential barriers that we'll face with dealing with the traditional acquisitions community, but on the other side, trying to interface with that traditional acquisitions community to make sure that my fellow acquisitions professionals understand how they can truly leverage this portfolio to get after the next generation of capability.
Thank you, Rock. And I meant to ask this earlier, so we're trying to make this engaging as much as possible as we are at the end of the day. The lanyards have been very helpful to see where people are coming from. Before we get to the next question, just visually, by a show of hands, if you can raise your hand when I say where you're coming from. So corporate, I recall that. Who here? Good number. Okay, good number from corporate. Academia. And Dash, you can raise your hand on all these if you want. Okay. Academia, government. Okay. Startups. Okay, we all know who to talk to about all these things. All right, investors. Great. And then military, just more specifically. Okay, so of the military, further pull. Okay, so Air Force, Space Force. There you go, Space Force. Army. No, okay.
This is the Air Force track.
Well, I know. But I think,
in all fairness.
Right, they have the Army application lab, and now everything's here. Okay, and then Marine. All right, knew we had some. And so you may know this, the The Space Force was created out of the Air Force. The Air Force was created out of the Army Air Corps, and we all know that Marines were created by God. So we know those things. So as we go back to questions in the remaining 27 minutes, what, a more serious topic, what key critical technologies, emerging technologies, should we be focused on now, in the future, and why?
So I'll give a rough cut. So I think Major General Pringle spoke about it earlier because AFWERX is part of the Air Force Research Lab, and in general, the Department of the Air Force is looking at an incredibly wide range of emerging technologies. She mentioned a number of them between artificial intelligence, quantum materials, advanced developments there. So we're not necessarily, as AFWERX in the overall SIBR-SITR program, we're not specifying you just need to be in these key technologies, because that's why the open topic is so great, to bring in all these great ideas, regardless of the specific field. So in general, AFWERX is not saying this is the only one. Within the Prime Division in the programs, we've had to focus down a little bit. So for example, the eVTOLs. So let's focus on some pretty specific things as far as electric propulsion. And that can enable a lot of different things in the future as far as getting away from certain energy dependence on specific types. So there's really good advantages that we're seeing and a lot of advances that we see in that technology. So we've focused on that a little bit. We're focusing a little bit on autonomy with these sort of vehicles. If you look at advanced air mobility, there is some level of autonomy that really enables some advancements and use cases down the road that we're really excited about. And so how have we done that? Some of the things we've done that within the Adobe Prime programs, we've partnered some of our small businesses and ecosystem companies with some of these eVTOL companies to see, hey, what can you do on an autonomy perspective down the road to help develop some of these capabilities? And then also think about how can we port some of these capabilities that we're developing either in this program or other Air Force Research Lab programs over to other programs of record. So it's not just a one specific vehicle solution. We want solutions that are portable between various platforms. And that kind of engages with the rest of Air Force Research Lab's perspective on autonomy in vehicles and their Skyborg program. So how do we leverage into those other efforts? That's really important for us to not just do one bespoke technology area that we've developed for one niche use case. That's not really our end goal because we're servicing the entire Department of the Air Force. So those are a couple. So electric propulsion, autonomy that we're interested in. And then also some of that advanced manufacturing, the composite work that these companies are doing, that feeds into a lot of our materials directorate and the stuff that they're advancing on other types of platforms. So there's just a handful that we're looking at. While we can't talk about the specific technologies that we're looking on the space until we get that officially announced, there's a lot of other areas that are really going to be exciting in the space domain that apply not only through the space, but other platforms, and how do we support the overall sensing grid and the overall capabilities within the force. Yeah.
Sure. So, sorry. So, like I said earlier, I'll be putting the hat on for what we should be focusing more on right now. So when it comes to emerging technologies that we should be focusing presently heavily is on small drones. Why I feel that is, one is because, we mentioned that we lost the race where countries like China is controlling the market, but is it really? The question comes back to the point that the technology, who's the biggest user for drone technology? It's United States. And where did the other countries see the benefits is as United States started taking a little bit more attention towards drones, started integrating in routine operations, state operations, public safety, other countries saw the benefit of it. So the question comes is it the technology provider that is controlling the market, or is it the user or the investor that's bringing, making the technology successful? So drones as such has a lot of potential because we can integrate, this is where interoperability of technologies, as Beckman mentioned about autonomy, we're talking about IoT, we're talking about AI, we can integrate these technologies and test it because it's easier to fail when there is no person on board. This is where drones can play that role, and we can test in environments, intense environments, and prove the concepts, prove the theory, and make sure that we are in the path to success. So that is where also comes to the point where when you talk about eVTOLs, again, eVTOLs, we are looking for passenger and cargo delivery. Now, would you want, it would be better to test it with small drones in a simulated environment, in non-simulated environments, and actually see the capability of communication, detect and avoid, and even to the point about safety overall. So are we focusing enough on small drones? I would say it's 50-50, because right now, as we are focusing on eVTOLs, the industry has separated, and I'm witnessing many of the people from small drone industry focusing on AM and not giving enough attention on the small drone side. So those folks who are working in the small drone side, startup companies that are in the small drone side, need to realize that this technology, if even as I mentioned earlier, even if you're late to get into it, we can get it right, and that is the important thing in the long run. So this has the current and the future application both fitted into it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So I'll add that the overall premise for the Prime programs is also more at a strategic level of how do we make sure we get engaged in an industry and establish that base in the United States, so that as the technology develops and as the commercial and military need arises, we are able to pull from that and have both trusted capital that's invested in that, and also just the talent to actually do those and create those capabilities. That's a really important part. And I think going out with what Dashes was talking about was, sure, we talked about the vehicles and eVTOL perspective, but the traffic management and the thing that goes into controlling all those in a small controlled airspace, that applies both in a commercial sense, but also in a combat scenario. We're investing in that. We have companies that are doing that sort of traffic management, as well as partnerships with the FAA and NASA to help develop those areas.
Yeah, so lots of opportunity within space. I can probably sit here and talk for 2 hours about all the areas that we want to develop tech within space. So traditionally, the way we approached space acquisitions was a very stovepiped approach. Where you had infrared systems, only doing infrared systems, exposed program offices only getting after that. You had military satellite communications. Then you had GPS, which everyone's familiar with. And with that very stovepiped approach, we developed a lot of exquisite systems. It's just awesome. I'm a big fan of a lot of our current capability on orbit right now. But as we look to pivot the architecture, there's just certain cross-cutting areas, cross-mission areas where we need to begin to drive investment. So if you take that architecture and you sort of like turn it on the side, what are the new areas that drive through each of the mission areas, right? So you think things like space power, nuclear power in space, being able to get after that. You think internet in space, right? Being able to pass data within the space layer. There's a lot of stuff up in space. So, orbital logistics is another like cross-cutting area. One of the first areas to really fall on its side has been launch, right? With the work of SpaceX, Blue Origin, really breaking open that market space. But now there's a ton of activity there. So, what Prime is starting to help us understand is, what is going to be that next domino to fall, right? One of the things that, if you talk to a space operator and you ask them, okay, what do you want to scratch after? They begin to talk about just all the data that we're ingesting from all the systems that's on orbit, exquisite systems that's bringing a lot of data to play. And so, internally within our acquisitions organization at the Space Systems Command, we're standing up units like the Cross Mission Ground Unit, Cross Mission Space, again, to get after enterprise solution that impacts each of our systems. No longer is the space operator looking at their SIBRs, infrared satellites saying, okay, we're just doing missile warning, missile defense, and that's it. Now that, there's emergent threats, near peer threats that have demonstrated capability on orbit, now they want to know what's going on around their spacecraft, right? So the data is out there. How do we pass the data to them? How do we, ingest the data? How do we shape the data? So leveraging, AI, ML, and then how do we help them visualize the threat to help them understand how to respond to that threat, right? So There's a lot of, excuse the plug, but there's a lot of prime areas, for us to get after within space. So, we're going to do this, initial Space Prime initiative, but it's not going to be a one and done sort of thing, right? And this is the first of many primes, not just within the Space Force, but within the Department of the Air Force that we're going to execute based on, our emerging needs, which we shared on the panel.
Thanks, Rock. So right now we're just over halfway into the session. And if I didn't mention before, we're going to have a rapid fire round towards the end before audience Q&A. We're going to keep it interesting, keep it fun, keep it lively. And so as we are approaching, in the second half, I'm going to start to combine some more questions just so we can get through all of those and make this as informative and productive as possible. And so with that, we've discussed a lot of different types of stakeholders, and we've discussed some of those key challenges. Can you share more, and particularly on, with Prime, some of the stakeholders we've been focused on? We talk about the 4 I's, not to be confused with the 5 I's. Literally we're calling them, industry, interagency, investor, and industry. If I didn't say that, I may have repeated one. But the 4 I's are where we're focused on. But we also are working with academia, the warfighter, you mentioned working with warfighter operator, and labs as well. General Pringle mentioned, the one lab focused on that. So can you share a little more about some of the challenges we're looking at and how we aim to overcome them with the stakeholders that you've mentioned today? Rock, maybe if you want to start.
All right, so I'll start off. The 4th I was the international community, right?
Yes, international, Curry,
right.
The team, yes.
And so as we reach out, I can speak for the space domain specifically, no longer are international partners coming to the table asking for access to our space capability. Now they're coming to the table saying, we want to bring our investment to the table and we want to truly partner with you. That's a very different conversation now, right? And then that drives a very different business case, for the Department of the Air Force. So how do we leverage that international partnership to leverage their resources to get after some future space capability? So I'm going to channel like one of my chief partners, Deanna Rouse. She leads our Space Systems Command international efforts. So when she's talking about the international community, she's now talking about them pushing out their own capability. There are some areas where they're probably more aggressive than we are. And so with that, there are some areas where they're probably more willing to take risks. So why not partner with them, mature technology through their pipelines, and really prove it out and bring it, back to, the entire enterprise, right? So there's a lot of opportunity there within the international community, I think. So, and we're starting to see them really be vocal in our Space Prime efforts, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think to kind of add on the other 3 I's, so as far as the interagency with Agility Prime, we've been very open and transparent that we are open and willing to partner with anybody. So we've had a lot of interest. It's been really good as we start to tell our story and what we're doing and explain why. We've gotten a lot of interest not only for interagency as far as NASA and the FAA, but also within the department, and help show the Army what we're doing, how it may apply to them, gain interest and support, kind of help share funding and leverage both services funding. The Marine Corps has been in from the start. They've been really excited about this sort of stuff because these type of technologies and the capabilities are on their roadmap. So what does our future roadmap look 10, 15, 20 years down the line? How does what we're doing help develop some of the technology for the things that they're interested in? Whether that's conventional vertical takeoff and landing, whether that's electric, or that's some high-speed vertical takeoff landing capabilities. So the services have been very involved, and we've been getting the word out, things like this to help spread the word for other agencies. If, hey, maybe the Coast Guard, and we've talked to the Coast Guard about how does this affect some of your near-term operations, or for a fire use case, how can you possibly use this for search and rescue, whether it's uncrewed or crewed, or as a sensing platform, or a number of sensing platforms. So interagency piece up to this point has been get people involved, provide the data, help share the data within the government, and then others will willing to part with anybody on them. So that's kind of the interagency. The industry is key for, we're leveraging what industry is doing. We are entirely resorting to what is the commercial use case and how can you develop that technology quicker, and how can the Department of the Air Force give some legitimacy to that by helping out, providing some of our government resources where they are beneficial to their development. So that's key with partnering with industry. And then not to be left out is the importance of the investors. These only succeed because of significant commercial investment in a specific technology or specific space. So having open communications with the investment community on what they're interested in and also what they're not interested in. As we look to future primes, it's important that we don't go down our own kind of DoD path of we want this without a good commercial path and investment strategy, because that will not be able to float on how we've structured these sort of programs. So really important to hit all of those as we're looking at what the next ones are, how we execute our current ones, and the future opportunities.
And thank you for mentioning, investors and investment community. Maybe we could touch on that a little more as we're combining questions, as we have, 12 minutes left. So if you could share a little more on, how we're working with the investment community. Jason from AFWERX just talked about, smaller and larger bets, TACFI, StratFi. Can you share how we're doing that and how we're aiming to do that more effectively, but also some opportunities for universities? That's something we were talking about earlier. If you could share a little more on those, whoever wants to start.
Sure, let's start. I can follow through.
Sure. So I think what you mentioned it. So Prime in and of itself is not doing all the necessarily interactions with all the investors. We have that F Ventures arm to go out and look and see and talk to these venture capital and the other types of investments on what is good space, what is not. So it's not a Prime Division is doing it all by himself. We have to leverage all the resources within AFWERX and also talk to some of these commercial use cases that might be similar or might have technologies of interest for maybe what are the commercial airlines looking at? What is last mile logistics looking at? Talking to those type of companies and look at what they're investing in, how we can partner with them, and what we can make public on what sort of partnerships we've created. So it's leveraging investments across industry and also listening to the signals that we're getting back from them.
So when you focus on dual use technology, we have to, I would say one of the critical things that in addition to interagency and everything that we have to focus on is the trust program. Basically, we need to build trust between interagency with the academia, the investors, and the small business, that we are here to see the technology move forward. We are here to get your ideas and fund those ideas to generate prototype, and then eventually talk about acquisition, strategies and everything. But all this requires to understand the big part is even to the point which is earlier, as she was mentioning about challenges, is as we talk as one team, there's the whole thing about public acceptance, and that plays a key role. And if we are not in our level of the investors, again, if we are not, we don't have trust between ourselves and we don't have a plan, then we cannot educate the public on how this technology is going to be used. So that plays a key role, and that is why we have to be more involved with the community to understand what technologies fits where. And when it comes to dual use technologies, the big question is, are we only focusing on the good side of the dual use technology? So when you talk about dual use technology, an example is the internet. The internet was a part of the internet was initially created to help military installations talk during nuclear war, and then from there that went into more of a civilian use, and now we are all part. We trust internet so much that we have made it like an everyday. It's an important part of our everyday life. So from there we see that it takes time to build that trust, but it also takes the right entity. So for a military use, it became a necessity for everyone through that pipeline. So when we work with companies or universities, we expect them to also communicate with each other and build upon that trust, so that when they approach us with the solution or a technology, we know that there is a path forward. And that's where I was on certain calls where where entities within the state are focusing on how to be successful for phase 2. And they're only talking about phase 2. And when I asked them, what's your plan for phase 3? It was surprising that one of the entities said that it's not part of our task force plan and phase 3, but it's interesting, we look into it. So if you know your finish line is phase 2, you're not going to move for a phase 3. But if you know your phase 3 is your finish line, then you have to put enough effort, time, and funding towards phase 1, phase 2, and then move ahead.
So one of our primary goals for Space Prime is to ultimately inform a make or buy decision. So when we're talking to the investor community, it's a dialogue on understanding, which mission area can we truly commercialize. I'm not trying to build a new program of record through a prime activity. I'm trying to understand, what is a mission area that commercial is willing to take on, and we just simply buy that as a service. Ingesting, new programs, building new programs of record. We have entire acquisitions program offices for that. But through this prime activity, what is that area where I can get a commitment from not only industry, but the investor community, and saying, this is an area where we're willing to go all in to, build out this mission area for you to be able to buy a service. And then we're starting to talk about, truly transitioning an entire mission area, over to the community at large. So not just a Space Force capability, but, a capability that's good for, I hate to say this, but like really global mankind, right? Space is a domain that everyone uses, right? So what is that mission area that we truly commercialize and, turn over to everyone else, and we're just simply customers of that. So ultimately, like when I think about my dream prime activity, it is that full commercial area that I'm, no kidding, able to turn over and just turn back to my leadership and just say, hey, you can just buy this as a service now.
Thanks, Rock. And this will be our last question before the rapid fire round, and then audience Q&A. And so sort of last question, we've talked a lot today about, SIBR, SITR, ABC 123, just kidding, lots of letters and acronyms. Can you share a little bit more perhaps on the relevance and the importance of, open topic and or out of cycle?
Right. So, open topic is our way of signaling, right? Our way of signaling, and also opening the aperture, lowering the barriers for bright ideas to come in and get involved with us. The out of cycle is, us even sending out like stronger signaling. So this fall, you're going to see an out of cycle STTR come out from, SpaceWorks, focused on like academia, right? We can do more in engage in academia within this realm. So the great thing I like about getting academia involved early is we can turn over our toughest problems and like have them really bring their brightest minds to help us solve those tougher problems. So, we got to start laying that seed early, right? To give those problem areas room to grow. And then once they grow, really energizing them through the rest of our SBIR pipeline to get capability on orbit.
Thanks, Rob. No. Okay.
I think he's at it.
Drop the mic. Drop the mic.
You got it.
Rock's it. All right.
Covered.
So we are moving into the rapid fire round. Are you ready for this? Okay. So
Maybe.
we're going to go through quickly, rapid fire, and if you want to partake in the audience, I welcome your participation as well. Okay. So Space Force, did you watch it?
Yes, still amazing.
Yes.
Of course.
Did you watch it? Yes. Okay. Good amount. Okay. This is real. Heads or tails?
Heads.
Tails.
It's
Heads. Let's keep going. Okay. What is your next AFWERX or SpaceWorks event?
Okay. So
This event was great. What's the next one?
next one, I will be out in a few weeks out to the Autonomy and Aviation Conference out in Santa Clara on the 19th of October.
Perfect.
So
Josh?
I'll be tomorrow at Move America representing AFWERX on 2 panels.
cross my fingers, Space Prime announcement.
I was supposed to be with Rock at that event, but headed home to Dallas tonight.
I will be at that one as well.
Yeah, he just
Okay.
realized.
Okay,
He's
yes.
going to be ahead of me.
I'm there.
Just realized
Yeah.
this.
We are coordinating real time during rapid fire. Okay, to you all and the audience. Top Gun, if and whenever it's released, Do you plan to, Top Gun 2, sorry, Top Gun 2. Do you plan to watch it?
Of course, just wish the Air Force had something similar. Yeah.
First watch 1 again and then watch 2 immediately.
With a very judging Space Force eye.
Top Gun 2, audience participation. You're going to watch it.
Yes.
Who's going to watch it quietly and not admit it right now? Okay, that's mine too. Okay. So who will win the Air Force Army football game on November 6th in Arlington, Texas?
Easy, Air Force.
Classmate of mine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Air Force.
Okay.
This is an Air Force session. So
And we know Army's not in here, so it's good.
So I think with that, I think we have fairly limited time. Are there some questions either out in the audience before we run out or online? So we make sure we capture some of the things that may have been brought up at what we're talking about and have an opportunity to cover them.
Any questions here in the AFWERX building? Just raise your hand. Oh, got one. Awesome.
Perfect.
Mike?
Oh, it's for the online.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Judy Ayala, and I own an IT firm. And I would like to know, it's great to hear about all this collaboration. And I know that in real life, there are always challenges for this collaboration, and especially within agencies, mentioning Air Force, Army, Navy. What are your biggest challenges, and what are the best ways that you have thought that you will need to solve those? Thank you.
I can take that.
Sure, you take it. It was an easy question. Sorry, I'm kidding. That was a very important one, though.
So this is where innovation, when we say it's not just from external, from within also, and that's why as an AFWERX program, we are working towards innovating our MN and Guardian to understand, their ideas can be generated, all the ideas can be generated to prototype to technology also. But at the same time, we're giving them the exposure that's required to work with industry to understand the biggest challenges. Now, the other side of it is we are working with universities, we're working with research institutes, small business, everything, to understand what the current market trends are, what is the technology that's here to stay, what are the challenges we are learning from them also. But it comes back to is we used, from both sides, if we look at it, within the DoD, we have traditional technologies that need to, change as through education and everything. So it takes a joint effort from both sides to make sure that we meet somewhere in the middle and able to, change that innovation culture. So that's where AFWERX program, stands out.
Yeah, and I'll say specifically to your question, what's the biggest challenge we face that we're trying with these prime programs is how do we transition it? The whole purpose is that we do this and actually get out to the field of capability. The purpose is not to actually sit here and just experiment for years. That's not what the Secretary of the Air Force is looking for. That's not what we're looking for. That's not what the warfighter is looking for. So that's identifying how do we get the right color of money when we need it outside of or within the structures of our current planning and budgeting process, which doesn't really lend itself well to adopting emerging tech very easily. So that's really one of the things we're trying to break down barriers on and identify what does that look like for the Department of Defense, what does it look for Air Force, and how do I identify that right operations and maintenance and procurement type money so we can actually buy these things when they're ready so we keep these companies moving and also get it out to the field quickly. So that's the number one thing that we're working on over the next year or so with this first Agility Prime effort is identifying and doing that.
I hope there's no one in the FAA or NASA here. We're not interested in a lot of pilot programs after pilot programs. We're looking to integrate technology, so that's where we stand out.
Absolutely.
Awesome. We got time for one more. You'll be the last one. I'll run over to you real quick.
All right, this is an easy one. You have General Pringle's job for the next 24 hours. Tell me what you're going to do to accelerate or change.
Let's go leadership-wise. Lowest in the chain doesn't speak.
So I'll tell you what we're doing right now. And what we're doing right now is we are going through the effort to make sure we are aligned throughout the Air Force and what sort of emerging tech we're investing in. How that plays into our overall programs, and then how that plays into the small businesses and things we're focusing on in the department right now. So that's something we're doing actively right now. So we make sure not only we have awareness of our big programs and to what our small business programs are doing, but also that we're able to spread the word on the capabilities that this group brings and some of our initiatives bring. So that's what we are doing. That's what I would do if I were her and continue to support those efforts.
Awesome.
That's a great answer. You want me to answer?
That's it. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, that's what you're doing.
There
Awesome.
are many more rapid fire questions for another panel, next panel at Capital Factory. We appreciate your engagement. Thank you again to the panelists. Thank you to the audience. Over to you.
Yes, thank you so much. Awesome panel. Thank you so incredibly much. You know, as we get ready to transition to our second to last panel, one of the things to keep in mind is that as we talk about, we were just discussing what the emerging markets were and what that actually looked like. One of the questions that comes up is, what does that look like for the air mobility capacity specifically? And I'm excited for this next panel because that's exactly what we're going to be asking and talking about.